Hello, everyone. Yeah, good evening. If you can hear me clearly, say yes in the chat box. Ezichi, good evening. Good evening, Einstein. Okay, let's wait for additional 5 minutes so that others can join us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Chair. Welcome, Nancy. You're welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Justice. Breonna, welcome. Good afternoon. Victor, welcome. Let's wait for 3 more minutes so that others can join us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We are going to commence in 2 minutes. Yeah, hello everyone. I think it's time for us to start. So I'll share my screen, and if you can see my screen, just say yes in the chat box. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, that's fine. I'll share my screen now. Can you see my screen? All right, that's great. So let's start from where we stopped yesterday. Yesterday we just started the process of linking CSS to a HTML document. Yeah. So what's going to happen today is we are going to start a new HTML project, create the HTML boilerplate, then link a CSS file to the HTML document so that everyone who wasn't getting clearly yesterday will get it clearly. So let's a new project. And to do that, like I mentioned, you create a folder. So let's call this let's just call it new, and let's pull up our VS Code. Then let's open up that project folder in VS Code, yeah? So I would go to my desktop location and I would open the folder. This is it here, new. I would click on it and I would click on select folder. And the folder is currently opened in VS Code. So the next thing is to create our HTML file. So we all know how to do this. I would create this. Then I'll generate the boilerplate. We all know how to do this also. I'll change the title to this. That's okay. Now let's create our CSS file. Our CSS file has been created. Now there is need for us to link the CSS file to the HTML file. So is everyone following so far? Is it clear to everyone so far? Okay. Babatunde says he can't hear me, but he can see my screen. Can everyone see my screen? And can everyone hear me? Okay then. So Philip is saying I should create the CSS file again. So I'll delete this and I would create the file again. Now to create a CSS file is still the same process, yeah? Just come here, click on this new file icon, then you type in the name of the CSS file. We'll call this styles.css. And that's it. The CSS file has been created. So the next thing is to link the CSS file with the HTML document. So how do we do that? We come back to our HTML file. In the head tag here, we create a link tag. Just type in link and press the tab key on your keyboard. It's going to generate this link tag. So I had explained this link tag yesterday. So what we are going to do is passing the path for the CSS file in this href attribute. So I would come in here. I would say ./. Now you can use /, but I'll just advise you to stick to ./, because when you get to React, you'll get to be using dot and /. So we'll say ./, then we'll select the CSS file. And that's it. We have just linked the CSS file to the HTML file. So at this point, whatever we do here in CSS, we can we can use whatever CSS code we write here to affect any HTML element or any HTML tag in our HTML document. That's clear, right? Okay. Is that clear? All right then. That's great. So I would like us to just create any tag at all. I would create a heading one tag, and I'll just say that, and I'll load this in the browser so that we can see what we are doing so far. So I would open with live server, and we have this. So let's see how we can use CSS on any HTML element we have here. So the first thing we are going to look at today will be CSS selectors. CSS selectors. That's the first topic under CSS that we are going to look at today. And CSS selectors is just simple to understand. All you have to know is this. For you to style any element in your HTML document, let's say I have a paragraph tag here also. And let's say, okay, I have a paragraph tag here. Say this is paragraph, yeah. And let's say I have other tags here. Now, if I have to change the color of this heading tag or this paragraph tag, or if I have to design it with anything, changing the color, changing the size, or anything at all, whatever you want to design with CSS inside HTML here, you have to select it. You have to select it. And for you to select any HTML element, it means you need to use a CSS selector to select the HTML element. And I also explained this briefly yesterday. So let's see the types of CSS selectors that we have. I'll just go over the basic ones. We have tag selectors. We have class selectors. We have ID selectors. I'll explain each and every one of them. We have ID selectors. And we have parent-children selectors. We have group selectors. And we have pseudo selectors also. So I would like us to look at tag selectors, class selectors, ID selectors, and group selectors. So these are the four types of CSS selectors that we are going to look at today. So let me open up design file here so that I can explain that practically to all of you. So this is just similar to you creating a shape here, and for you to design it, like for you to change the color, it means that you need to keep it selected. You need to select it before you can design it. That's the same thing in HTML. When you create a tag, it's similar to you, let's say, creating a text in HTML. For you to design that text, you have to select it. So that's how it is also practical here. So let's say we want to select this H1 tag, which is the heading one tag here. What we are going to do is we can use the tag selectors to select it. We can use the class selectors. We can use the ID selectors. We can use group selectors also. But let's see how to use tag selectors first. So if I want to select an HTML element with the tag selectors, all I'll do is just write the name of the tag in CSS. I would come here, I would say H1, just like that. Now, when you write the name of the tag in CSS, in your CSS file, it means you have selected any H1 tag that is in your HTML document. That's what it means. And currently we have this H1 tag, right? So I have selected this H1 tag in my CSS file. So the next thing is for me to start adding colors or adding my size values or anything at all that I want to add so that I can design that H1 text better. So after I select it, what I'll do is I would create what we call the style CSS styling block. So to do that, I would hold down my shift key and I'll press the curly brackets key on my keyboard, just like this. Now take note of this. This is the curly bracket, not the not the square bracket. When I create the curly bracket, then I would press the enter key on my keyboard to create this space. Now this is what it means. Yeah, when you select the H1 tag or any tag at all, you will then create this styling block because it is inside the styling block that you will put in all the values, all the properties and values that you want to use in the designing of this H1 text or this H1 tag that you have selected in HTML. So currently, if I want to change the color of this H1 of this H1 tag, yeah, what I'll do is I'll come here inside the styling block. I'll type in the property that I want to change or that I want to design. Now, in my case, I want to change the color property. So I would say color. Now, take note, it is spelled C-O-L-O-R. It's not the British color spelling. It's C-O-L-O-R. So I would say color, and I'll put the colon sign there, which is to indicate that this is the property that I want to edit. Now, since I have specified the property that I want to edit here, it will be time for me to specify the value, like what color do I want to assign to this H1 tag. I can just come here and say red. Just type in red, like RED. And after that, I'll type in the semicolon sign or the semicolon sign, anyhow you know it. I'll type it. I'll type that in at the end of the red word there. Now, this is it. I selected the H1 tag, which has this H1 text in HTML. Then I created the styling block and I decided to set the color property of that H1 tag to red. Now you'd end this statement with this semicolon sign. When I save this now, make sure you control S to save. Save the CSS and the HTML document. When you save that and you go to your browser, you'd see that the heading tag, the heading text here is now red. Is everyone following? Justice, whatever you set for H1 affects every H1 text. Yes, whatever you set for H1 affects every H1 text. So was that clear to everyone? Yes, you can use color codes. I'm just trying to make it as basic as possible now. I'll take out red and show you where you can get color codes, or you can go to your Figma file, get color codes. For your Adobe XD file, get your color codes and use them in CSS. So if I come here, let's say this is my Figma file. If I decide to use this color here, I can get the color code from Figma. Come here. And to paste the color code in CSS, what you have to do is, first of all, hold down your shift key and press the hash sign or the pound sign on your keyboard. Then you paste the color code, just like this. And you save that. If I come back to my browser, you'd see that the heading text here has the color of that color code. So, is that clear? Okay, Justice, we are going to get to that. We are going to get to the point where we will actually style each tag separately. Yes, but is there a space between the color and the? Okay, let's that question is asked by Ezichi. So let's try that. Let's create a space between the property here, which is color, and the colon sign here. Let's create that space. Let's save. Let's go to our browser and let's see how it is. It's still active. So you can see that that doesn't really matter. But just for the sake of writing clean and consistent CSS, don't create any space between the property and the colon sign. So I hope that's clear. Okay, not everyone is saying yes. Okay, then that's fine. So that's how to use the tag selector in CSS to select elements from your HTML document. Now, there is a problem with using the tag selectors. Like if I come here now and I have another H1 tag and I say new heading tag, yeah. Now, it's not it's not a must that all of my heading tags must have this color or all of my heading text must have this color. There might be need for me to have this color and this have a different color. Now, the problem with using the tag selector is that as long as I selected H1 here, it means all the heading 1 tags in my HTML document will always use this color. Now, that's a problem. So that's what's going to lead us to talk about class and ID selectors. So class and ID, class selectors, ID selectors. So class selectors and ID selectors. So we are going to see how to use class selectors to target or to style particular tags. Particular tags. So let's create these two heading 1 tags. Then let's come here, let's create another paragraph tag here. So we have 2 paragraph tags and 2 heading tags. If I come here and I say heading 1, I say color, and I set the color to this. If I come here now and I select the paragraph tag, I set the color also. Let's say chocolate. I save that. When I come to my browser, you'll see that the two paragraph tags are using the same color, and the 2 heading tags are using the same color. Now, that may not be how I want it to be. That does not leave me with options. It means it has stifled my design options or my design range. So what I'll do at that point is I would like to select this heading 1 tag on its own and style it how I want to style it. Then select this, style it how I want to style it. Do same to this and do same to this. Now with class selectors, you can do that. But for you to be able to do that, you need to assign a class attribute to each of the tags. You need to assign a class attribute, and we discussed about having attributes in tags. So for me to pass in a class attribute for the first H1 tag, I would come here inside the opening H1 tag. Take note, inside the opening H1 tag. Then I'll type in class. I'll say class. I type in class, I'll press the tab key on my keyboard to have the equal to sign and the double quotes show up there. Now, just like this, I have passed in the class attribute. Now, the next thing is I would like to give the class attribute a name. So what name will I like to call this? You can call it whatever you want to call it, but in this case, I would say heading hyphen one, heading heading hyphen one, or I can just say heading first of all. I can say heading. I would come to talking about using hyphens and all of that. Now, this H1 tag, this first H1 tag has a class with a name called heading. Now, I can identify this H1 tag now with this class name, which is heading. And if I come in CSS, I can choose to not recognize this as H1 anymore. I can start recognizing it as heading. So I hope that's clear. Now let's come here, let's create a new class attribute, and let's say smaller. Let's call this smaller. Let's come here, let's create a new class attribute, and let's call this sub. Let's create a new class attribute. Okay, and let's give this a name. Let's say min. Now let's save that. Let's go to our CSS file now. Let's take out all of this. And at this point, it will be possible that we can select all of these tags with their class names, no more their tags, no more the name of their tags. We can use the class names now to select all of them individually. Now, how do you select a class name in CSS? All you have to do is type in the dot sign. When you type in the dot sign, then you type in the name of the class you want to select. In this case, I would like us to select the heading class. So I'll say dot heading. It's as simple as that. Then you pass in your styling block, and I can say color, and say green. So that's it. Now you'd see that when I save this, I go to my browser, it is only this first heading tag that will be green. And that's because that is the heading tag that has the class name of heading. And if you come here in my CSS, it is just the class name of heading that is selected. So is that clear? Okay then, so I think that's clear. So I would go further and let's see how to select the other classes. Come outside the styling block. Make sure you are outside of the styling block. The styling block is this opening curly bracket and this closing curly bracket. Now come outside of it and select the next class name, and it is called smaller. So I'll say smaller. Let's use color once more. I would say yellow. And I would select the paragraph tag. I will select this tag that has the class name of sub. I'd say color. I'd say red. When I go back to my browser, you'll see that all of these tags are being styled independently. And that's because I am selecting each and every one of them with their class names, not their tag names. Now, there are some things that you should note here. When selecting the class name of a tag in CSS, you don't give a space, like you don't say dot space heading. This is not correct. So it has to be dot heading with no space in between. And also when you are giving a name to the class in a tag, you use one word like heading here. If it has to be two words, then you have to say heading hyphen, then you pass in the next word like heading hyphen one or heading hyphen main. Now, If you don't want to use hyphen, you can use underscore. But in CSS, it is a popular convention that you use the hyphen character. So you can say heading hyphen main, and you save that. Now, when you save this as heading hyphen main, when you come here in CSS, you would have this selected as heading hyphen main, just like that. So that's how to give class names. And also avoid using uppercase letters like, except when you get to React, where the class here will be class name. It will be lowercase c and uppercase n. But in regular HTML and CSS, this class has no uppercase letter in it. And try to ensure that the class name also has no uppercase letter in it. Yeah, it's just regular CSS convention. But that doesn't mean that if I use an uppercase letter like this, it won't work. See, it still works, but try as well. It's CSS convention. Use lowercase letters all through your class names, just like that. So, is that clear so far? Okay, just one person. Okay. All right then. Okay. So we have seen how to use tag selectors in CSS to select HTML elements. We have seen how to use class selectors. Now let's see how to use ID selectors. So ID selectors are similar to class selectors. All that is different is just instead of to call this class, I'll just call this ID. That's all. And I'll give it an ID name. I can still use this as my ID name. I can come here and change this to ID. I can also change this to ID. I can also change this to ID. Just like this. So this is how to create an ID attribute on an HTML tag. So now if I come here in CSS, I would have to select the ID, those ID names here in CSS. And the way to select ID names in CSS is to just take out the dots. That's for classes. For IDs, it's the hash sign or the pound sign. That's just it. It's the pound sign for IDs. And you'll see that when I go to my browser now, all of this is still the way it was. That's because in my HTML document, I gave this H1 tag an ID with the name of heading main. I gave this an ID with the name of smaller. I gave this paragraph tag an ID with the name of sub, and this an ID with the name of main. And I came here in my CSS document and I selected those IDs by just passing in the hash sign and the name of the ID. Then I passed in the properties that I want to style the ID with, or the ID element with. So is that clear also? Okay. Now, you may be wondering when to use IDs, when to use classes, when to use tags. I'll just say this: have it at the back of your mind that if it's just regular HTML and CSS, sometimes if it's even Tailwind, Bootstrap, and the rest you'll be doing, you would mostly use classes. Yeah, you would mostly use classes. IDs are not as widely used as classes. You'd mostly use classes, and that's because even Bootstrap, Tailwind, and Bulma, and Semantic UI, most of those frameworks actually build all of their components and attach the styles of those components to classes. So you will mostly use classes. Yeah. Now, before I move on to a different type of selector, I would like to say that you can have more than one class name or more than one ID name. Okay, so let's go with classes since that's what we are going to be using more. So let's take all of this out. Let's take all of this out. Okay, now, let's say I create a class and give this h1 tag more than one class name. I can call it heading main. Remember, this is one class name because there is this hyphen sign there. Now I can decide to give it another class name. To do that, all I'd have to do is just create a space. Take note, I am creating a space inside the quotation mark here that also has this heading main inside of it. So not outside the quotation mark, still inside the quotation mark. So I'll just create a space after heading main, then I'll give it another class name. So I can say new class name. You can just call it whatever you want to call it. Now this tag here has two class names, and you can have more than two. You can have three. You can have four. You can have as many as you want to have. So I'm just trying to let you know that to create more than one class name, all you have to do is create a space and type a new class name. Now I can select this head1 tag, this h1 tag with any of these two class names. I can decide to come here and use that new class name to select it. Set this to red and I go to my browser. Okay. New class name. Let's save this. You can see that this is now red. All I had to do was just save my file. So you can have more than two class names. That's if it's necessary. But if it's not necessary, just stick to one class name. But just in case you come across any HTML document and you realize that a tag has more than one class names, or you have lots of class names inside a class attribute, just know that it is possible for you to have more than one class names. And that's that for classes and IDs. So is that clear? Okay, Einstein is saying, what's the advantage of having more than one class name to a tag? There is no serious advantage there. It's just that sometimes you might want to select further. You might want to select two tags that have the same class names, and further you might want to select just one of those two tags. So in such a case, you might give the other tag a new class name so that you can select just that tag. But there is no serious advantage there. And when you come to the point where you will need to have more than one class names, you will know actually. You will definitely know that time. So is that clear? Can I proceed? Okay then. So so at this point, I'd like us to so I'd like us to look at another type of selector. Let's look at group selectors actually. So let's look at group selectors. I'll take this out. Now, sometimes yeah, let's have a H3 tag. Yeah, and then another tag here. Now, sometimes I might want to just give this tag, this p tag, and this h3 tag one CSS property. I might just decide to say, okay, I want the h1 tag here and the h3 tags to have a yellow color. Now I can group those tags instead of styling them one after another. And the way to do that is I'll just say h1, give a space h3, and I'll just say color. I'll say yellow. And that's it. If I come to my browser now, okay, haven't saved this. Okay. That's so we can see that the h1 tag here, the h1 tags, which is this tag and this tag, and the h3 tag are now yellow. And all I had to do was to group this. I just typed in h1, I passed in the comma sign there, and I typed in h3. Then I created the styling block, and I just passed in the property. Now, any property that I put in here, even if I say background color and I say blue, it's going to apply to just every h1 tag and every h3 tag in my HTML document. I can say font size larger, and it's going to affect the font size. I can set the font size to, let's say, 98px. And you can see that it is really big, and it's only affecting the h1 tags and the h3 tag here. So that's how to group selectors. I can also come here and I can say, okay, let's add the p tags. All I'll do is just add the p tag like that. And as you can see in my browser, all my tags have the same styling properties. Just like that. So it is also possible for me to select a tag name and a class name together. Let's come here. Let's take all of this out. And let's give it a class name. Let's say class, and let's say heading name. And let's give let's allow the paragraph tag to just stay the way it is. Now, I would like to select this particular h1 tag with the class name and select these paragraph tags with just the tag name. Take note, I am selecting this with the class name, but I would select all of the paragraph tags with the tag name. So I would come here. What I'll do is I would select the class name first. I'll say dot heading main, and I'll give a space, and I'll type in the tag name, which is P, and I would say color, I would say red. Okay, I keep missing this, yeah. Okay, so I would say dot heading main, and I'll put in the comma sign, and I'll put in P there. And if I say color set to red, you'd see that this will be affected, and the paragraph tags will be affected also. Okay, can you guys hear me clearly now? Okay, so was I clear enough? Did you guys understand what I was saying? Okay then. Okay, well understood. So that's how to select basically in CSS. We are not going to look at pseudo selectors for now. As we as we progress further, we we are going to look at pseudo selectors and and any other selector at all that we have to look at. So since we have seen how to select tags basically at the most basic level in CSS, what I would want us to do now is to look at how we can execute proper typography in CSS, which is like the editing of text, yeah, the designing of text. So let's create a paragraph tag for us to do that. Let's come here in HTML. Let's create a paragraph tag. Let's say Lorem 2. Let's have that. So what I would want us to do is let's go to our browser. I'd want us to edit the font size, edit the font family, edit the font weight, the line height, the letter spacing, and all of that. Just the same way you guys know how to do it in design. Is everyone hearing me? Okay. So let's see how to edit the font size of this paragraph tag. Let's give it a class name. Get used to class names. So I'll call this text class. Get used to class names. I'm using that more often. So let's come here. Let's select that. Let's select text class and let's increase the font size. So to increase the font size, just say font hyphen size. As you're typing it, VS Code will actually bring up options for you. So select font size, and in your design file, if the font size that you assigned to, let's say, to your body text is 16px, like I have here, yeah, all you do is come here, you say font size 16px, and you save that. If I go to my browser now, you'll see that the font size is actually 16px. It's not big. If I come here and I change this to 36, you see that it is actually bigger than 16. I'll keep it set to 16px. And 16px is actually the base font size for, I think, for Google Chrome browsers and Edge browsers. 16px is like the base font size. Yeah, so 16px is actually good for your body text. So I would set this to 16px. Now that's me setting the font size of the text. If you want to set it to, let's say, 54, just type 54px and it's going to be set to 54. That's clear. Now let's see how we can change the font weight, like to change the weight to make it bold or bolder or any of that. To make it actually clearer for everyone to see, I would set this to 36 so it can be clearer for everyone to see. So to change the font weight, create a new line inside the text class styling block. Take note, I am trying to design this text class here, which belongs to this paragraph tag. So make sure you are still inside the styling block of this text class. Make sure you are still inside the styling block. So after I set the font size, I would set the font weight. So just say font hyphen weight. And you can use any of these values here, or you can just come here. You can scroll down. You can use 100, 200. If you don't know what these values are, just use Google. You can come here and say font weight values, and you have all of them show up here. 100 is thin, 200 is extra light, 300 is light, 500 is medium, 400 is normal or regular, 400 is normal or regular, 500 medium, 600 semi-bold, and the rest, just like that. So you can come here, you can set your font weight to bold. You can type in bold, just like this, and type in bold, just like this. And if I go to my browser, you'll see that the font weight is bold currently. I can come here and type in bolder. When I save that, you'll see that it looks bolder than it was. Now, you can use values, you can use numbers, you can say font weight, and set this to, let's say, 800 and save. And it's not really present actually, so you can easily set this to bold or bolder, whichever works for you. That's how to set the font weight of a text in CSS. Is that clear? Okay then. Regular, to set it to regular, you can come here and just set it to 500, but most texts are regular by default. So this is it. You can set this to 500 and that will be okay. You can't actually type in regular and only type in normal. So I know in design, in Figma or in XD, it's called regular. But when you're writing CSS, it's called normal. Normal is still regular. So let's set this to bold. Let's save that. And that's okay. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions. So let's see how to change and set the letter spacing value of this text. So the letter spacing value is also easy. Just type letter hyphen spacing. Then you set it to, let's say, 1.5. And set it to 4.0. 4.0px. Now you can see that setting it to 4.0px, the space between the letters have increased. I can set it to 4.0%, and 4.0% is different from 4.0px. But most times you'd actually set the letter spacing value in px, the letter spacing value in px most times. So I'll set it to 5.0px. So that you can see that the spacing value is way bigger than it was before. So that's how to set the letter spacing value, of a text in CSS. Now let's see the line height value. Now for us to properly see the line height value, it means we need to have more than one line of text. That's when you can calculate the lines of text. Currently, we only have one line of text. So let's go to our HTML and let's create enough text, create more than one line of text. So I'll say lorem, let's say 8. So you can see that we have this text here, and the space between each line of the text is the line height property. We can use CSS to increase that or reduce that. And to do that, just say line height. Just say line height, and you can say 1.4. Now, I don't have to type in px for the line height property. Just type in 1.4 and press the enter and save. I can say 1.8, and you can see that as I keep going up with my value, the space between the lines of text keep expanding. So you can say 2.0. This is it. Keep going up. Now, what happens if I come here and I say 48px? It's still going to work. And say 48px. Now, the reason I am talking about saying 48px is because if you come here in Figma and you create a text, let's see. Can you guys hear me clearly? Okay. X, yes, it is true that you can style or design within the HTML code, but that's that's poor. That's poor coding. That's like, I don't know how to say it, but it's not. It's not safe. It's not cool actually. Yeah, it's not cool. It's always better to create a CSS file. Yeah, it's like a poor practice. So create your CSS file differently and style your website in your CSS file. Yeah, so that you don't mess up your structure and all of that. It makes it cleaner. So, what was I saying? Now, when you create a text in Figma, for example, let's use this plugin to generate some dummy text here. Now, when you create a text like this, you'll see that the line height here is set to auto. Now, most times to change the line height value, you might come in here and just type in, let's say, 48px. This is how you change the line height value most times. And change it to 24px, to 24 or 24px, just like this. Now, this is valued in px. This line height value here is valued in px. If you type in 32, it is valued in px. Now, if you are converting this line height value to a website using CSS, it means you would come here and you type in px actually. So over here we said 24px, right? I can come here and say 24px. Now let's go to our browser. Let's see what we have. You can see that this is actually not properly set. Reason is because the font size value here is 12. The letter spacing value is 0, and this is set to regular. So let's see if we can make that happen. Let's set this, let's take out this letter spacing value. Let's set this to normal. Let's set this to 12. Let's see how it's going to look like. So you can see that I have properly made that happen. You can see that the line height spacing here in this text is the same line height spacing that we have here. The only problem is that this one might look zoomed in. If I take it to 100%, you see that the way it looks here, the space that we have here is the exact same line height space that we have here. Is that clear? Okay, Kofi says, what's SAS? Now, SAS is one step further in CSS. Yeah, SAS is like better CSS practice. For you to know how to write SAS, at least you need to understand CSS. You need to understand CSS first before you know how to write SAS. Okay then. So we have seen how to apply the line height value. That's why when you are designing, when you are creating your type style, it is always good that you create the size value properly to match with the line height value and to properly match with the letter spacing value and to also properly match with the weight value, because it is the way it looks here. If it is written like that in CSS, it is going to look exactly the same way it is written like in CSS. Is that clear? Okay then. Okay then. So let's go ahead and let's see how to set. Okay, we have talked about the letter spacing value. We have talked about the line height value. We have talked about the font weight, the font size. And let's see text decoration. Now we can decorate our text. We can have underline, we can have overline, we can have line through. Let's select line through. Let's see what's going to happen. Meanwhile, let's increase the font size to see clearly. And the line height value, let's take this out. We don't want that there. So let's go to our website. You can see that there is a line through, like there's a strike through on all of our text. And that's because I set the text decoration value to line through. If I change this and set this to underline, I save that, our text will be underlined. I can come here and set this to dotted, and that's not actually going to give us any effect because our text is not, our text can't be dotted just like that. So I come here and I set this to, let's say, solid or overline. Let's say overline. You'll see that the line actually is not under the text, it is above the text. Like you can see, we have this here. It's not under the text. So that's what you can do with the text decoration property. And it's going to be as easy as that. Oh, is everyone following? Okay then. So let's see how to set the font family, like to change the font family of the text. And I'll just like us to use the Google Fonts service. So let's use Google Fonts to do that. So the way to do that is to come to your browser. Just go to fonts.google.com. Paste that in the chat. Paste it here. Go to fonts.google.com. When you come here, you'll be able to select any of this text or any of this typeface that you have here. You can see that we have lots of typefaces here. You can just select anyone. Now let's say we want the space grotesque family. This one here. You can come here and search for any font family you want. If it is Poppins you want, and search for Poppins. If it's Inter, search for Inter, whatever you want. I would go for space grotesque. Now, when you search for the font family that you want, and it shows up like this, you would click on the card, this card here, just click on it. When you click on it, you would have this page show up. This is the Select Styles page. Now, you will come here, you see different style variants of this font family. That's what you'll see. So in my case here, I would like to go with the regular 400 style variant. So the way to select this one, or to select anyone at all, is to come here and click on select this style. This select this style button here. You can see where my mouse cursor is on. Click on it. When you click on it, you can come here at the top and click on view your selected families. Sometimes this page is going to show up on its own. You won't have to click on that button. But just in case the page doesn't show up, come here and click on view your selected families. When you do that, then you would see this code here. This code. You see this code here. Is everyone following? Okay. Now you copy this code copy just this code here, copy it. I would paste it in the chat first. When you copy that code, you go to your HTML document. Yeah. When you come here in your HTML document, in the head tag is where you would paste the code. So you would paste the code here in the head tag. So you can, let's arrange this properly. You can see that this is not staying on the same line as this. So I'll keep my mouse cursor here and I'll use the tab key to indent that properly. I would indent this properly also. Now, when you paste that in the head tag, you'd save that. When you save that, the next thing you do, can everyone hear me? Okay, give me 2 seconds. Let me get something. All right then, so I'm sorry I had to go get water. So after you link that, can everyone hear me? Okay, so after you link, you paste those tags in your head tag, those links in your head tag. The next thing you do is to go back to the Google Fonts website. Then you see this section that says CSS rules to specify families. Now you would copy this CSS code here. You'd copy it. Then you go to your CSS file. Then you paste it inside the styling block that you want to apply that font family to, just like this. Paste it and save. When you save, you'd see that if I go to my website now, my font family has been updated to the Space Grotesque font family. And this looks cooler than the other font family that we had, right? Okay then, so what if you want to use more than one font family? Yeah, you can actually do that. All you do is come here. Let's do something like that. Now, I have selected one font family, which is the Space Grotesque, right? I can go back to my Google Fonts homepage and I can select Poppins. If I click on Poppins, I would come here and let's say I want to select the Poppins regular 400. I would click on select this style. When I click on select this style, this API will automatically update this link to contain Poppins and Space Grotesque. Now, this is the link I would copy and I would paste in my head tag. I would copy this link. I would copy this link and I would paste it in my head tag. If I come here, let's take out this one here. Let's take out this one. I paste this link now. And I save it. I would come here, I would take out this Space Grotesque. And if I go back to my Google Fonts website, you'd see that Over here in the CSS rules to specify families, we have two font family properties now. This one for Poppins and this one for sans serif. Now I can come here and select this one for Poppins, this first one, this one for Poppins here, and this one is for space grotesque. Now I can come here, select this one which is for Poppins, come here and paste it. When I paste it and I save it, and let's say I come here now and I create another paragraph tag and I say lorem 40. Let's give this a class name of new text. I come here and I create new text here and I want to give it a different font family. Let's give it a font size of 24px first. And for the weight, let's make it bold. And for the font family, I would come here and I would copy this second font family here, which is for space grotesque. And I would go to that styling block and I would paste it in, just like this. Now, if I save this and I go to my browser, you would see that this one is Poppins and this one here is space grotesque. Is that clear? Okay, that's, I only have, okay, everyone is saying it's clear. So that's it. That's how to use more than one font family. But as we proceed further here, I will show you how to apply a global font family in the whole website. That's not for now. So we have seen how to apply, we have seen how to work with text. So if that is not clear, anyone can ask me any question in the chat box. If there's any question you have about working with text or designing text in HTML and CSS, you can say that in the chat box. Okay, so can we proceed to talk about colors? Okay. All right then. So let's look at colors. Now, to look at colors, I'll take this out and I'll take this out. Let's create a regular paragraph text. Just two lorem ipsum words. So if I want to apply color to this text or to anything at all, if I want to apply color to this text, let's call this text. I would come here in CSS and I would say .text. I would select it. Then I would say color. We have seen how to do this, yeah? I can say blue. Now, this is color. What about background color? To apply background color, just type in background color. You can say background, but for the color sake, if you want to apply a background color, just say background color. Now, when I say background color, I can set this to, let's set this to something, let's say brown. I go to my browser now, you see that the text, the blue text, the text is blue, but the background of the text is brown. So background color is the color that will stay in the background, while color is the color that will stay on the background. So let me go over that again. Background color will stay in the background, but color will stay on the background color. I hope that's clear. Okay, no one is answering. I hope that's clear. Okay, it's not clear. Now, color, let me come here. Let's use Figma to explain it. If I have this, and I have a text, I keep it on top of this. Now, if in CSS I want to apply background color will belong to this shape, which is red, while color will be applied to anything that is on this shape, on this red background. Anything that is on this red background is what will pick up color. So color in this case might be white. If I have any other text here, it will take up this color value of white. So the background color is the color that will be in the background, while color will be assigned to any object, any text, or any icon that is on top of the background color. Is that clear? Okay, Shulamite asked the question. Okay, it's clear. So, okay, that's clear. So that's how to apply color and background color in CSS. That's how to apply color and background color in CSS. So what we are going to look at is how to apply gradient colors. Like that's actually a trend. Actually, it's actually a trend to know how to use gradient colors. So we are going to see how to use gradient colors in CSS. So if you come here in CSS, gradient colors can be really tricky. It can be discouraging also, but because of the world we live in today, everything is made easier by the hour. Everything is made easier by the hour. Let's increase this font size. Font size of the text, let's say 64 px. Let's save that. Let's come here. Now it's bigger. You can see the color of the text is blue and the background color is brown. Now, if I want to set a gradient color as the background color for this text, before what I'll do is I would come here and I'll start writing lots of color values, DEG values, RGBA values, and all of that. But these days it is easy. Just go to CSS gradient. Go to your browser and say CSS gradient. And it's cssgradient.io. I would paste the link in the chat box. So these are some tools that can you guys hear me? The message is failing. Is my network okay? Okay. All right then. So just go to cssgradient.io. I have pasted the link in the chat. When you go to cssgradient.io, you can come here and create your gradient however you want to create it, and it's going to appear like that in CSS. Now you can come here. You know how we create gradients in Figma. It's still the same concept that you can use to create your gradient here. Now, when you create your gradient, you can play around with this. You can come here, play around with this, create a new gradient point, come here in your color picker, select a color for the gradient, create a new gradient point here, select a color for it. Just create your gradient however you want to create it. Now, when you are done creating it, you would come here, scroll down, you would see that as you are creating your gradient, this platform is generating the gradient CSS code for you automatically. Now, this is the code you were going to write if you were to write it on your own. You can see that there are lots of values here that can make it really complex for you to actually do it on your own. So you can come here, copy this CSS code like this. When you copy it, go to your CSS file, take out this background color, take it out. We don't want that. Then paste that code that you got from CSS gradient, just like this. Make sure it is properly positioned. Use the tab key to position it properly. Now you can see that all of these color values are what we would have been creating by ourselves. And honestly, you can see that this is actually, that is clumsy actually. It's clumsy. So when I paste this code here and I go to my browser, you would see that my gradient effect is evident here. So you can see that my background now has that gradient color, that gradient effect. Was that clear? Did everyone grab that? Okay. All right then. So you can always use CSS gradients to always make your and there are lots of things you can do in CSS gradient. You can upload an image, apply a gradient effect to that image, then have it taken to your CSS. You can have a radial gradient effect. You can have a linear gradient effect. So you can come here. It's free. Use it how you want to use it, and that's fine. Okay, so this is how I got the link. Just come here first, edit whatever you want to edit. When you are done editing, just the same way you edit in Figma. When you edit, as you are editing, the platform will be generating the gradient code for you automatically. Just automatically on its own. When you are done editing, scroll down, you will see the code here. Just come inside here. You can click on copy to clipboard here. If to copy like this is difficult, come here, click on copy to clipboard. When you click on copy to clipboard, it will be copied. Then you can go to your CSS file and paste it like this. Just paste what you have. When you save it, you have your gradient effect on your website, just like this. That's without you stressing yourself. Okay, someone is saying, can values be put manually to mimic Figma? Definitely. You can put in the values manually. Let's try something like that. Let's come here. Let's have this. Let's see if we can create. Now, don't have mercy on me if my gradient design is whack. So come here. Let's change the color for this. Let's create another one here. Let's change the color for this. Bring this down. Let's change the color for this. Okay. Let's say this is our gradient effect here. I can come here and I'll set this to RGBA. To RGB. Sorry, when I set this to RGB, I have 200. This with this hex code. Let me even make it easier. When you have this, click on inspect. When you click on inspect, keep the triangle or this rectangle selected. Click on inspect. Scroll down. You'll see the gradient code here. You'll see it here. You can copy this from Figma and paste it in CSS, but personally, I'll tell you that this is not actually going to work really well. It's not going to work really well as it should. Now, you can see over here, we have the colors and the percentage over here. So I can come here. You'll see that I have the color here, the hex color here, and the percentage here, which is 0, the hex color and the percentage here, which is 24. So I can come here, copy this hex color. The percentage is 100, yeah? So when I copy that hex color, let's copy this hex color here, E007. I'll come here, I'll paste it here. I'll keep it set to 100. Now you can see that it takes effect here. I can come here, copy this, 69.79. I'll say 69.79, and the effect is happening gradually. So I'll just come here, copy this, copy all of these, and I'll be pasting them here. When you are done pasting, come here and copy the code and paste it in your CSS, and it's going to work just fine. Was that clear? Okay, someone is asking, Einstein is asking, what if you don't want the gradient to affect the BG, but you want it to affect just the text? Then you'd apply the color on the text. What you do is you'd set color. You change this from background. Let's take out color here. You change this from background to color. Let's do that. That's one thing with coding. Coding is all about trial, error. Don't be scared of the code. Break it, scatter it, break it, scatter it, just like that. So let's save this. Let's go to our browser and let's see what's going to happen there. Now you can see that the gradient effect is not really present on the text. So let's take out this color line here. It's not effective also. So sorry about that. Let's take this back to how it was before now. Let's come back here and let's see if there is any, just Google that. Period. Background image, gradient, background clip, text. Okay, so this is the CSS gradient text. There is a blog by CSS Gradient on how you can apply text to how you can apply gradient color to your text. So how to create a text gradient, the syntax and the breakdown. You'd come here, you read this. When you read this, then you'll see that for this, it's H1, font size, then the background is WebKit linear gradient. This is it. So you can just use this syntax to apply the gradient effect, the gradient color effect to your text. So personally, I don't mostly do that. I don't apply personally, I don't apply gradient effects to text in CSS. What I do as a trick is this. I create the text in Figma. Let's say text. I make sure it's the same font family that I would want. Let's make it 32. I would come here. I would just use the gradient color effect here. Anyhow I want to use it. When I create my gradient here, I'll keep it selected. I can create a frame on it. Control Alt and G to create a frame for the text. And keep it selected. Come here and I would export it as an SVG. And I would place it on my website as an SVG. It's going to still appear as clean as a text should apply. Now, this is going to save you a lot of stress. And this is also going to help you keep your design really cool. The text gradient design will be really, really, really cool. Now, this can work for text, but not for background colors most of the time. So this is the trick I use to combine Figma and CSS so that I can have cool gradient color effects on my text. Is that clear? Okay. Okay, that's just one person saying yes. Okay, what if the text is dynamic? If the text is dynamic, at that point, what you do is to come here, read the CSS gradients. That's a very good question. Read the CSS gradients syntax here, and you would walk yourself through this process since the text is a dynamic text. But if it's a static text, you can just use this Figma method, get the gradient color from Figma, get it as an SVG, then you put that on the front end. But if it's a dynamic text, then you can use this syntax actually to make it have that color gradient effect. Are there any questions? Are there any more questions? Okay, I'm not getting responses from everyone. Okay, a dynamic text is like the text that displays what is gotten from the database. That is what that's like the easiest way. Like our tweets, the tweets you see on Twitter are dynamic text because whenever somebody tweets, the tweet is sent to the database of Twitter and it is gotten automatically from the database of Twitter and displayed on your TL. So whatever you see on your TL comes from the database of Twitter. If the person doesn't post, you don't see. So that is not static. It is dynamic. Whatever you see on your TL is not controlled by you, and it is not static. You don't come on Twitter today and see the same tweet every day. It changes. The more people tweet, the more tweets you see. So that text is a dynamic text. So can I proceed? Is that clear now? Okay then. So we have seen how to apply colors, yeah? Now the next part of CSS I would like us to look at will be, I would like us to look at how we can apply spacings, dimensions, sizes, and so many other things, with CSS. So let's see how we can create sizes actually for text, like size shapes. So I would come here, I'll take this out. Now, if you want to create a basic shape in CSS, you can use the div tag to do that. Like we said yesterday, div tags are container tags, so which means they can be rectangle or square shapes. So let's create a div tag here. Now I have created a div tag. It's a container. Let's give it a class. Let's call it container. Now I have created a div tag with a class of container. If I come here on my website, you'll see that nothing is showing up. But there is a div tag, but it's not showing up. And that's because this container currently has no height, no width. It has no value at all. So since it has no height and no width, it is at 0 for width and 0 for height. So what we are going to do is come here in CSS and select that container or select that div with the class of container, just like this. When you select container, then you can assign a height value to it. I can say height. Now, when I say height, I can say, let's say 76px. I can say width. And for width, I can say, let's say 76px also. And I save that. Now, if I come here in my browser, it's still not going to be evident because just creating a height and a width does not mean that I'm going to see that container. I have to give it a background color so that I can see it clearly. So I can come here and say background color, let's give it a hex code of E3, E3, E3. Now, when I save that, you'll see that I have a container here with that background color of E3, E3. I hope everyone can see that background color. This background here, let me give it a very evident color for those of us who may be finding it hard to see. Let's just say red. Now you can see that I have a red container here with a height of 76 pixels and a width of 76 pixels. Now, let's make this 176 and 176. Now you can see that it is bigger. So that's how to create a rectangle shape using CSS. Now I can create two rectangle shapes. I can create two rectangle shapes. And Let's do that. So this is one container. I would create another container and I would give it a class of new container. Now take note, these containers don't have any element in them. I have not put in any child inside the containers. They don't contain anything yet. They are just empty containers. So I would go to my CSS now and I would style this new container div that I just created. So I would say new container and I would give it a height of, let's give it a height of 120px and let's give it a width of 120px. So I would say 120px. Now, I would save that. I come to my website, you'll see that it's not showing up still, and that's because I have not given it a background color. So I'll give it a background color of green. When I save that, you'll see that I have a new container created right under the other container, which is the red container. So is that clear? Okay, someone is saying, how about positioning the div block? Yes, we are going to get to that. That's the display property of the div. We are going to get to that later. So before we proceed, yes, if you duplicate the rectangle, it's going to work fine. It's still going to work really fine. You can duplicate this and just create another one and copy this class and duplicate it. It's still going to work fine. Duplication works really well in coding. In any sphere of coding, duplication is boss. It's copying and pasting. Yes, that's the question. How can we make them horizontal? I'm going to get to that later. But before we proceed, I would like to ask if everyone here is familiar with pixels or px. I hope I'm not just talking. I hope I am not just writing px and hoping that everyone knows what px means and we are just going for that like that. I would like to know if everyone here understands what pixels are. Okay, if you understand what pixels are, you can just say yes in the chat box so I can know that yes, very good number of people here understand what pixels are. Okay, that's great. That's great. That's great. So pixels are what are the measurement units that's used in design, actually in visual design. Pixels, like if you want to measure, like in Figma, if I create this rectangle, the width is 168 pixels. The height is 115 pixels. Just like in real life, you measure by miles or kilometer. Now in design, in visual design, you measure by pixels. So that's just what it is. Now, in web design, yeah, pixels is not the most advisable measurement unit. We have other measurement units like REM, EMs, and percentages. Now, for you to create for your designs here to be responsive, you need to actually use the REM unit. Like if I come here, if I want to set the height value here to any value, I can set it to 4 REM. Now, 1 REM by default is 16 pixels. Now, the reason REM is really useful is that REM is not fixed. You can use the REM value to create a minimum width or a minimum height value, and you can use that to make your website to be responsive. If that sounds complex, don't worry about it. Just know that REM values are more useful to containers than pixel values. Now, 1 REM is 16 pixels, and if you remember, you can recall that I mentioned somewhere that the base value for Google Chrome browsers and most browsers is 16 pixels. Like most browsers start measuring their base values from 16 pixels. So that's why 1 REM by default is 16 pixels. You can actually change that to set your own default value, but by default, it is 16 pixels. So if I say 4 rem, it means 4 times 16. If I come here and I say 4 rem, it's still going to be 4 times 16. I can say 4 rem, that's 4 times 16. When I save this and I go to my browser, you'll see that this red rectangle has shrinked. And that's because 4 times 16, let's calculate that. 4 times 16 is 64, yeah? So this is 64 pixels for the width and 64 pixels for the height. For you to confirm that it is actually 64, let's set the green container to 64 pixels and let's set this to 64 pixels. Now you'd see that they both have the same size. They are of the same size, but this is measured in REM and this is measured in pixels. But I would advise you to most times use REMs when measuring your containers, not pixels. Now, if that is also going to be complex, don't worry about it. Stick with pixels till you get comfortable to start using REMs. And Einstein, yes, it is the same thing with the setting minimum and maximum width in bubble. That's correct. So now we have, let's set this back to 170 pixels. Let's explain margin and padding. 170 pixels. Let's set this to 170 pixels and 170 pixels. Let's save that. If I come here, you'll see that I have these two rectangles. Now let's see how to set the margin property and the padding property in CSS. And as we know, margin is, and when I say margin, I'm talking about margin, and when I say padding, I'm talking about padding. Just in case my accent is making you not understand some of my words correctly. So margin is the outer space between two objects in design, and padding is the inner space between an object and its content. So let's come here in HTML and let's have some text content inside these two containers. So I'll have a H1 text content inside this container. I would call this text content. I would create a text content inside this new container. I would create a H1 text and tag there, and I would say text content. I would save that, and if I go to my browser, you see that I have text content here and text content here. So our both containers now have children inside the both of them. So margin is, okay, let's use H3, or let's use H4. Let's make it smaller actually, so that we don't have some overflow effect. Let's use H4. Let's make it smaller. So margin is the outer space between two objects, and padding is the inner space between an object and its content. Like margin is the space between this object and this object, and padding is the inner space between this red container and this text content. So the space between the edges of this red container and its object is the padding space. So padding is an inner space, margin is an outer space. Now to set margin and padding for objects in CSS is pretty easy. If I want to set the margin value for this first container here, I would come here, look at it here, it's selected. Inside the styling block, I'll just say margin. When I say margin, then I'll pass in a margin value. Let's say 200 pixels. When I save that, watch what's going to happen. You'll see that it's going to create an outer space between itself and the top of this browser, the left side of the browser, the bottom of itself, which is between this green rectangle and itself. And it's also created a space between itself and the right side of the browser. But since the browser is really big, you won't see that space here. But there is a space here. Now, this is not really cool because sometimes you may just want to add a margin space to one side, like the top or the left or the right. Now, if you want to do that, you can come here and say margin hyphen left. You set that to margin hyphen left. Let's set this to 100. If I save that, you would see that the margin space will only be applicable to the left side of this red rectangle, which is our container. Now, I can say margin hyphen top. I can say margin hyphen bottom. And I can say margin hyphen right. Just like that. Now, this may be complex or this may be tedious for you to write most of the times because let's say I want to apply a margin value to the top and to the left. Does it mean that I would write margin top here, then create a new line and write margin left? That's going to be hectic. Now, there is a way you can actually apply margin values to 2 or 3 sides or all sides in one line. The way to do that is to just type in margin here. And for the values, you would use 4 values. Now, in design, directions are clockwise. When I mean clockwise, I mean you go from 12 to 3 to 6 to 9. 12, 3, 6, 9. That's how the directions are counted in design. Like this is what I mean. This is where the 12 and like the 12 time or when I say time is the 12th hour is at on a clock. This is where the number 3 hour is at on the clock, and this is for 6 and this is for 9. So directions in design is 12, 3, 6, 9, which is top, right, bottom, left. So if I come here, I can say for the top value, let's go back to our browser so that we can be seeing this. I can say for the top value, I want 0, like I don't want a margin value at the top. So I would say 0, then I would give space. Take note, there is no 0px. There is no 0px, like it's in basic math. 0 is absolute, 0 is 0. There is no 0%, there is no 0 kilometers. You get it? 0 is 0. So I would say 0 with no px, and that 0 is for the top. Now for the right, since it goes from 12 to 3, the next position is the right. I would say for the right position, I don't want any margin value also, and I would give a space again. Then for the bottom, I'll say, okay, I want 100px margin value for the bottom. Then for the left, I would say, okay, I want 120px margin value for the left. Then I'll put in my semicolon sign, just like this. When I save that, you would see that the margin value only exists at the left and at the bottom. Now, there is a problem here. There is a problem here. If you notice there is this little margin that is just here. Nobody placed it. It's there on its own. And there is this little margin at the edge here. Nobody placed it also. It's just there on its own. Now, that can be a problem when you are building your website. It is always good for you to reset the website or the browser when you are building, so that all these little margin spaces that are created by default by the browser will disappear. Now, how do you do that? How do you reset your web page when designing? To do that, come here at the top of your CSS file or your CSS page, at the top, and create what we call a universal selector. Now, universal selector will select the whole web page. It will select the whole web page. Now, to create a universal selector, type in the asterisk sign on your keyboard and create a styling block. With this, you have created a universal selector. So currently, I am selecting the whole browser page. Now, when I select the whole browser page, what do I want to do? I want to clear out all these margin spaces and padding spaces that the browser is adding to my design by itself because it's messing up my design. So how do I do that? I would say margin set to 0, not 0px, 0. Then I would say padding set to 0. Now, when I save this, you would see that all of those margin values will disappear. My my object will stay the way they are supposed to stay at the end. At the end. So that reset is always necessary. It's always necessary. So after I reset, you'll see that my page will become great. Now I have been able to create a margin on the left side and at the bottom with this syntax. Just one line. Always remember, in design, it's always clockwise. Top, right, bottom, left. Top, right, bottom, left. Just like that. So 0 here is for the top. This 0 is for the right. 100 is for the bottom. And 120 is for the left. Now, if I change 120 to 50, you would see that the left margin will close in. It has been reduced. And that's okay. So if I come here now and I take this, I take all of this out, and I just type in 0, you'll see that the whole margin value has been dissolved. Now let's look at padding. Remember, padding is the inner space between an object and its content. Always remember that it's an inner space between an object and its content. In this case, let's see the padding space that exists between this red rectangle and its content, which is text content. So I would come here, I'll take this margin property out, and I'll type in padding. Now, padding behaves exactly like margin when writing it. There is padding left, padding top, padding bottom, padding right. But first of all, I'll just type in padding and I'll give it a value of 32 pixels. Now you can see that the inner space between this text content and the red rectangle, which is the container, has increased. This space here has increased. This space here has increased. It increased at the bottom and the right also, but since those spaces were initially big, you won't really notice that. So now, if I want to set the padding value for just the left side, I would say padding left. And you'd see that the padding value will only increase on the left side. The space between the text content and the left side of the rectangle will increase, only that space. And I can come here and say padding, and I would say for the top, I want 0. When I save that, you'll see that it's going to be applicable here. Tax for margin. Now, before I proceed further, I would like to proceed further. Before I proceed further, I would like to know from everyone if everyone is following. Okay. So that's margin and padding. Now, I want you to take note of a problem, because in design, there is always a problem. Now, you see that when I added the padding value to this red rectangle, it increased in its size more than the green rectangle, even with the fact that the values are the same. The height and the width values are the same. 170, 170, 170, 170. So how come that the red rectangle is now bigger in size? Because I added a padding value. That is actually a bad design. That's not supposed to happen, because just imagine that we had our website properly structured and the padding value is making the containers to expand in a way that is not proper. It means all of our designs will become bad. So how do we prevent something like this? To prevent something like that, we need to come here in the universal selector also and create a property called box sizing. Now just type in box hyphen sizing. When you type in box hyphen sizing, select border box and save that. Now you'd see that when I save this box sizing and border box, it will reset this container to stay the way it is supposed to stay, which is to have this same size as this one here. Now that effect where the rectangle is increasing in size because I increased the padding value will no more be there, and that is actually good design. So take note, this universal selector will be the same on all websites that you build or that you design. So you might not even cram or know this. You can copy it and paste it somewhere. Whenever you are creating a design, the moment you create your CSS file, copy this and paste it. Just copy this and paste it just to reset your website on the browser. Reset the web browser page. You can copy this and paste it. And that's going to be fine. So do we all understand the margin and the padding value? So far we are getting really far. We are going really good with the with CSS. We are really good with CSS. We understand typography now. We understand color. Now we understand how to create shapes and space shapes. We understand all of that. Where does the border and outline come in? Outline, I haven't talked about outline yet, but this box sizing will be in the universal selector. Yeah, it will be in the universal selector. Will the container increase in size with respect to the elements inside? No. Okay, let's do something like that. Let's make it practical. Let's say lorem 12. And let's go to our browser. And we have this here. Let's make it lorem. Let's add more content. Lorem 20. You can see that it does not increase. It goes out. It goes out. It overflows, actually. It doesn't increase. That answer is to Einstein, but there is an overflow property in CSS that you can use to actually stop that. But that's not going to be for this class. I just want to be sure that everyone understands all we have learned today, which is linking CSS, selecting CSS. We are going to see how to make it responsive also, Einstein. I just want to be sure that everyone understands how to link their CSS file, select their CSS elements, edit their text, add colors, create space, create box shapes, and all of that. I hope everyone understands that clearly. So if you understand that clearly, it means you have understood up to 30-35% of CSS, if you understand that clearly. You've understood 30-35% of CSS. Now I want to ask everyone here, this is going to be up to you guys, because I was thinking actually that we were going to close up CSS really quick and build our project. But so far, I have been using more of the time to explain, because I want everybody to understand how this thing works compared to design. Because as you can see so far, we normally come to design here, create design, because all of us here understand how Figma works. So I have been trying to use the Figma knowledge that we know to connect it with CSS so that everyone understands clearly, because it is easier for somebody to learn a new thing coming from what they already know. So that has been taking more of our time, and I would like to ask everyone if we can have another class set maybe for tomorrow, where we are going to look at CSS Flexbox and see how to make create just a basic landing page and go from there. I would just like to know if everyone is okay with that. We can just have a quick class tomorrow. Okay, if that's going to be possible. All right, so I would drop my Discord channel in the link here. Not really same time. I'll just drop my Discord channel so that I would also share the time of the Discord channel. I would also share the time of the session in the Discord channel so that anyone who wants to attend can attend. It's just going to be a quick one so that we apply all we have been learning so far and see how we can put it together. My Discord is not loading. I don't know what's happening. MTN. So let's time. I think the time will be I think I set the time. I think I said ready. Give me 1 minute. I would also announce it on my Twitter. If you're not following me, it's Joe_Brent_ on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter to see updates on. I think the time is let's check out the time here. Yeah, 1 minute. I think the time should be about 7 also, or maybe before 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 Nigerian time. I would announce the time also. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. It's Joseph Brendan on LinkedIn. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. So that's the Discord. Thank you very much. You can join on Discord. I would announce the time on Discord, and I would announce on Twitter. I would also announce on LinkedIn so that we can come tomorrow and just put everything together and we are going to understand everything better. So thank you all for showing up today. Thank you all for showing up today. I appreciate it.